We have to steel ourselves for the next 6 months and work together to slow the spread.
These measures are really draconian. We know that.
This is an unprecedented time in our history.
It's not your fault at all. Our country is going through a massive shockwave right now.
But together, Australia, we are up to this challenge.
We've got to make sure that we look after each other.
This is going to take a huge hit to GDP.
Sales have dropped probably 90%.
But they just close doors and that's it. I'm out of a job, man.
This is a major issue. This is the most testing of times for Australians in 2 or 3 generations.
This coronavirus will not break our Australian spirit.
Undoubtedly, there's going to be all sorts of changes, so our life won't be the same again.
Australia is on the brink of a complete lockdown. Thousands of businesses have been shut and millions of people urged to stay at home. Entire industries have ground to a halt. We are in unprecedented times. All of this to prevent the spread of a potentially deadly virus, COVID-19. But is the medicine worse than the disease? Are these incredible draconian measures worth it? Tonight, in this Sky News special report, we explore how we got to this state, why all our lives have been turned upside down. We hear from the ordinary Aussies who are going through incredible hardship and follow their progress as they respond to these immense challenges. We speak with the experts about how to keep safe and sane. We ask how long all of this will last and explore how Australia may have changed forever. From a Chinese market to a Sydney health centre, COVID-19's spread ignored borders and defied predictions.
Yeah, it was very difficult to see the coronavirus pandemic developing as quickly as has done. When we first talked about it, we were talking about an issue in China. Started to spread, and I suppose it's been early on a slowly moving story, but it's really rapidly escalated, I suppose.
The virus is believed to have originated in this wild animal market in Wuhan, China. The first case was reported in late December. Within weeks, hundreds had been infected across the country.
The result shows that the bat is the most likely natural host of the virus.
Our close proximity and connections to China meant it was only a matter of time until this potentially deadly virus arrived on our shores. Australians evacuated from Wuhan were quarantined at Christmas Island. But remarkably, commercial flights from Wuhan to Sydney were allowed to continue in the early stages of the outbreak.
Look, there have been plenty of mistakes along the way, including those flights from Wuhan, including taking our time in shutting down the borders. But I've got some sympathy for our political leaders during this time. This is a nightmare. This is an unprecedented nightmare. And I think we do need to show a little bit of sympathy to all the leaders who are dealing with this.
One of those passengers would become Australia's patient zero. A day before Australia Day this year, a man who'd recently returned from Wuhan tested positive for COVID-19. Just like South Korea and Iran before us, Australia would see a dramatic surge in infections, from 9 in January to 2,600 in late March, with more than a dozen Australians dead.
When I first heard about the coronavirus in China, I thought, uh-oh, this is not good, because we've had so many viruses come from that part of the world, causing lots of havoc, but I had no idea it would be this bad for us.
Coronavirus cases are expected to continue to increase for at least the next 6 months. The Wuhan coronavirus has well and truly gripped Australia. With a pandemic declared and almost 1,900 infections nationwide at the time, and the possibility of an exponential increase, the Prime Minister took drastic action.
The Premiers and Chief Ministers, together with myself, have tonight agreed that there is a need to move to more widespread restrictions.
The first wave of measures shut down. Pubs, cinemas, gyms and large indoor gatherings. All Australians urged to keep social distance. Cafes and restaurants restricted to takeaway and delivery only. The food service restrictions forced drastic changes to Gabrielle and Jamo's businesses.
G'day all. My name's Gabriel Moretti, the owner and founder of Amoretti's restaurant. So I've had to make that phone call probably about half an hour ago and just let all my staff know that unfortunately some of them I will be needing their services to get through the next couple of weeks, possibly the next couple of months, just with the takeaway service and home delivery. But unfortunately some of them, you know, I don't have a job. You know, I've had to let them go.
Our venues have had to adapt very quickly, and we've had to, I guess, change the model of our business and how it all operates and runs. And it's heartbreaking to obviously tell your staff members who are the face of the business that they're now unemployed or they've been reduced salary. It's heartbreaking, and it's one of the toughest periods of my life.
The Stage 1 measures suddenly made thousands of Australians jobless. Some queued overnight outside Centrelink.
Recently, because of all this coronavirus craziness, I have lost a lot of my jobs, a lot of shifts, a lot of money. Still need to find a way to pay rent, so hopefully I heard a couple of stuff online about some payouts to people who have lost their jobs because of this corona craziness, so hopefully something can be done so I can keep paying my rent in Sydney.
Both my jobs closed in the city. I worked at hospitality, one at a bar, one at a restaurant, and both of them like shut with very little notice. I mean, look, we knew it was coming, but they just closed doors and that's it. I'm out of a job, man.
Yeah, mate, my job's closed down. I work at the gym. It's been a bit tough. I've been working there a bit, but just started. But yeah, they're closing everything down, the new laws. Corona's affecting everyone.
And I was re-entering the workforce. My daughter's just started daycare.
Yeah.
So just trying to get back in the workforce at the worst time when everyone's losing jobs. It's really difficult.
Seeing those massive queues at Centrelink, I think it was a massive wake-up call to everyone in government and everyone in the country just about how serious this is. I've got friends who've had all 3 of their children lose their casual jobs in the space of 10 days. I mean, this is catastrophic. And I think that the whole country is starting to realise that.
Max Gent is one of the many wondering how he'll support himself. Sacked from his new job in media, forced to cancel an overseas holiday just days after his grandfather passed away.
Yeah, I think it's not all bad at the moment. I'm lucky enough to be at home. Both my parents at the current minute have their jobs. I know I'm doing quite well compared to a lot of other people, but it's still been difficult adjusting. I'm hoping it's going to get better. For not just me but all Australians, especially the ones really, really struggling.
The restrictions were tightened even further. On Wednesday, food courts, auction houses, markets, theme parks, pools and libraries were ordered shut. Limits were placed on the size of weddings and funerals and other public gatherings. Overseas travel banned. State borders were closed.
Police.
And strict penalties were implemented for those who broke quarantine orders.
When did you start your self-quarantine?
Last Saturday.
Rachel McManahan closed up her salon after the government ordered people to spend no more than 30 minutes inside a hairdresser. That order was overturned, but she's bracing for more bad news.
It makes no sense. We're being encouraged to social distance and encouraged to stay home. Yet you're allowed to go and get your regrowth done. And obviously, I do not take this lightly. This is my livelihood. It's my passion. My business is my life. But the fact that we're allowed to stay open, it just is crazy to me. I have girlfriends who are hairdressers and who are pregnant or crazy high risk. Girlfriends with asthma who are now we are being forced because it's your health or your livelihood.
The gym shutdowns is another challenge for Josh Munro, months after he opened his personal training business.
This essentially meant for me that I was unable to work and unable to provide my service for any of my clients, which has been an interesting experience, but it's one that I've had to adapt to the circumstances and still continue to provide value for each of my clients.
All of Australia's professional sports leagues abandoned or postponed their seasons.
This is the first time that I can particularly think of where football hasn't been immune to what's going on in the world. The GFC didn't seem to affect football much, but this has just stopped everything in its tracks, and we're at ground zero. We've got to work our way up again.
The states took their own stance on closing schools, so many families decided not to take the risk.
The medical advice says school is a safe place, and I understand some of the questions that parents would have, but if a child does have very mild symptoms, almost sometimes unrecognisable symptoms, put them with a grandparent, and that could put that grandparent at grave risk, at perilous risk, that no family would actually want.
And at the end of the week, the government clamped down even further.
This is the strong advice of all states and territories, that unless it's your household, the family, those who are living at your residence, that being with only one other person in as a gathering outside is what is required. People aged 70 and over should stay at home and self-isolate for their own protection to the maximum extent practicable.
The lockdown leaves so many Australians in limbo, and all of us are forced to embrace a new way of living.
These will be times like we will never again see in our lives, but if we back each other and support each other, we're going to get through this.
Australia looks a lot different nowadays. It's just so strange at the moment to be walking around and not really seeing a great deal of human activity, at least not in my neighbourhood. I mean, you see the odd person going for a run or the family taking the dog for a walk, but other than that, there's not a whole lot going on. It's just really eerie, weird, and I guess this is going to be life for a while. So many Australians are working from home, quarantined at home, or have no other place to go but home. And being stuck inside has its challenges.
It's very easy to fall into bad habits when you're stuck at home, but we should take this as an opportunity. Things that might have been part of your daily routine when going to work can fall by the wayside. So my message would be to act as you would if you were going to work or if your kids were going to school. Keep up your routine. That means not forgetting to floss and brush your teeth often, take care of your skin, get lots of sleep and drink water. All of that's still crucial.
I think that, it can be stressful for kids as well at the moment with all the information that they're seeing and the fear and the change. So helping them to understand that we're all in it together and we've all got roles to do, adding jobs that we can all do in the house to make it easier for everyone will help them feel valued and important as part of that family group at the moment.
And while it may be tempting to sit and watch TV all day, stay up late eating junk food and alcohol in excess, with some extra time on your hands, it's actually a prime opportunity to focus on developing and sticking to healthy habits so you can be proud of what you did during this time and not look back with regret.
Exercise is even more important when confined to your quarters. Stuck-at-home gym bunnies is a new market for Josh Munro. The personal trainer is now connecting with his clients online.
I've been socially distancing myself, so essentially working from home here in the beautiful Sunshine Coast, so it's not all too bad. I've just finished up filming some videos for content, and now I'm just working on some programming for some of my online clients. So I set myself up just outside here, and I'll show you what that looks like. So essentially each of my clients will have an app on their phone. It'll look like this, similar to this, and then they'll be able to click on each exercise, jump on here, there'll be a description in there.
It's not just the body that needs attention. A recent study, published in the journal Lancet, highlighted the potential serious impact extended isolation can have on mental health.
In circumstances of infection where we're required to enter into quarantine or self-isolation, the risk of this is directly removing one of the most important scaffolds and supports that we have in maintaining mental health and wellbeing, which is that of social support. So what we see is people feeling unsettled, more anxious than usual, bored, which leaves the mind free to roam towards anxiety. And of course, the longer it goes on for, the boredom can set in even more significantly, increasing the risk for mental health concerns and problem behaviours like alcohol and drugs.
I think also it's a time for a bit of kindness. A lot of people going through economic crises and, very stressed. If you know people who are isolated, drop them a message, or a local neighbour, just check in on them. So I think that's a time where we can really pull together, and I think Australians are a very generous lot. We're a very resilient lot, and we've really got to band together for these next few months.
And there's so many challenges facing those who've already been hit hard.
Chicken was one example that that I had to go through 6 suppliers just to find chicken. And when I did find it, I ended up paying almost double the price. So guys, I know there's a supply and demand at the moment for certain things, but we urge, please, wholesalers, keep your prices down, support small businesses. You know that we're doing it really tough at the moment.
The other day, maybe last Friday, my grandfather suffered a brain hemorrhage and unfortunately passed away. So in this time of COVID-19 and everything going on, it's been quite difficult to organise a funeral and just basic stuff like getting a cremation done, having family members fly in to say goodbye to him, and for the first time in a long time, we're facing the prospect of maybe not having anyone with income in the family.
We've set up an online delivery system basically overnight. The team has obviously had a couple of stressful days with getting this up and running, but just amazed on how everyone's just worked together.
So I've put the sanitizer here on the front entry. I've also taped the floors to make sure that we've got enough social distancing between patrons that come through to pick up their orders and the Deliveroo drivers. So customers will pick up, they'll walk around the lines, and they'll exit the restaurant again.
And this is the first day for years that I haven't known what to do. I just feel very numb because I feel like this isn't really happening. It couldn't possibly be happening.
How long will all of this last? How much longer will we see these scenes? How much longer will we have to be stuck at home and deal with these draconian restrictions? Those are the questions the experts don't yet have the answers for.
This issue of the lockdowns is going to go on for many, many weeks. We're going to see changes made. We're going to have some of the conditions increased, some of the measures increased. I think what the government's tried to do is introduce measures that people can adapt to and crank up as required to, because they're telling us that we're going to have to be in some sort of a slowdown or lockdown or shutdown for many, many months. I don't think you can just shut a whole economy, a whole society down completely, thinking you're going to open up again in a few weeks.
I mean, if we give a half-assed approach to this thing, then it's going to drag on for a lot longer. And that's why we're better off saying, okay, let's rip the scab off here. Let's shut down, let's lock down, let's self-isolate, let's practice self-distancing and everything else, and then hopefully the recovery can come sooner.
I would like to think that this is a short-term problem, and by short-term I mean perhaps April and May. I think, however, it's looking more likely to be a 6-month issue, and even then I think it's going to have a long tail. The counterbalancing point that I would make, though, is that it doesn't take much for Australians to be hopeful and aspirational for the future. I think once we pass the peak, the psychology of this issue will change almost immediately.
Pandemics often come in waves. Multiple strains and outbreaks can develop weeks after the original. And with so many people in isolation, it may take several waves until everyone is immune.
I think there's a number of possible forward scenarios. One of them is that the government relaxes some of the restrictions, but then we see increases in cases, so governments put them back on again, and that might happen, assuming we get a viable vaccine, say in 18 months, that might happen all the way through that period. So I think people have to get to a mindset of navigation and change rather than going, we can all bunker down, it'll all be gone away in 3 months or whatever time frame. I'm not saying it won't be, I'm just saying that we need to keep really open minds about what our strategy should be.
COVID-19's damage to the economy will be immense. A recession is expected, and there are fears things could even hit Great Depression levels. Those businesses operating during the pandemic are likely to make permanent changes.
People are experimenting a lot with working from home, and if they find they can be productive in that, we may see far more businesses either do that full time or allow a lot more employees to do that 2 or 3 times a week, and that has then impacts on the traffic system and the public transport system, etc. So there's a whole range of possibilities. Not all of them will stick, and some definitely won't, but I think we'll see quite a lot of change in the way the economy works.
I think that's where one of the areas of reappraisal will be, building that redundancy in so we're not as reliant on those overseas supply chains. We've got alternatives locally. The other thing that's really important is the world we left behind 2 weeks ago, when we get back to it very soon hopefully, has some big challenges, particularly in energy and things like that. And the technology and the contribution that Australia can make as an energy superpower under a new framework for energy, including hydrogen and mix of renewables. So using our manufacturing base to drive those sorts of things is really smart strategy.
There will likely be changes to healthcare, with more medical centres using telehealth.
More broadly, health professionals and health services need to be aware of the potential increase in mental health problems across the community and be setting up alternative pathways for people to access care, whether it's phone, Skype, Zoom, etc. Also, we need to be thinking about particular groups that are at risk. For example, people living in situations of family violence, people with existing mental health problems, and older Australians.
And a permanent increase in border controls may be considered. While privacy advocates have warned, governments may use the pandemic as an excuse to gain more access to your private information and permanently track you.
There is no doubt that the coronavirus is a breakpoint in Australian history. I think that we will look back at this time and say it was before Corona or after Corona. I think that going forward that Australians be more focused on security. We might have bigger food lockers in our homes. We might have a place to store toilet paper in the garage. I think that we'll be more focused on supporting local manufacturing going forward. It might also create a sense of survival, a sense of gratitude, a change in our relationships, our interpersonal relationships, where we're more focused on the familial rather than on ourselves going forward.
Without Stevenson there tonight, they've got to find some...
It may be a while until we can watch the footy live, take the partner for a fancy meal, or even have the mates around for a barbecue.
I think you'd be naive to think that all of a sudden one day in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months that someone's going to click and everything's going to go back to the way it was before. I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think that's going to be the case with many aspects of our lives, and even the little things like hugging and handshaking and kissing and whatever. I think people will take some time to get back to what used to be the normal, and some people will never go back.
This is truly an unprecedented time we're living through. We've already seen so many Australians rise to the challenge and help out each other. However long this crisis lasts, and whatever lasting impact it has on the country, we will endure.
Like say a year's time, I think we'll be back on our feet. I'll be involved in rebuilding our venues and just getting things up and running and back to how it used to be.
I'm not really sure what the future holds. Most of that is out of our control. So I don't think there's any point worrying about anything outside of us. I think what we should be doing is focusing on what we can control, which is how we act individually as a response.
Yeah, I think once Australia adjusts and gets used to this life at home, I think we'll all be okay.
I do want to support my community, and I will be here. I'll stand to support my community and do whatever it takes.